National Action Network and Reverend Al, thank you so much for inviting me to be with you today. And let me congratulate all of you and Reverend Al for being on the forefront in the fight against racism and for social justice. Al, thank you so much for all that you're doing. Yesterday, as I think we all remember, was the 51st anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of the great leaders in American history. And we all remember where Dr. King was when he was murdered. He was standing with the most exploited workers in the United States of America, sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. And we all remember what Dr. King was working on during the months before his assassination. He was working on a Poor People's March, which said that we have got to bring together poor people, whether they're black or white or Latino, Native American, Asian American. We've got to come together to transform this country and change our national priorities. And what Dr. King believed then is true today. And today, we have a president, for cheap political reasons, who is trying to divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation. And we say, President Trump, you're not going to get away with it. You're not going to succeed. We believe in bringing the American people together, not dividing us up. We're here at a pivotal moment in the fight for racial justice, and as that struggle goes forward, there is good news and there is bad news. The very good news is that despite enormous opposition, we have made some real progress in recent years. 20 years ago, Al and I were sitting up here, and we said, you know what, this country is going to elect a black President of the United States. Very few people would have believed it. It happened. And Obama was reelected in 2012. Today, after the 2018 election, the Congressional Black Caucus now has the largest number of members in its entire history. No small thing. And in that last election, we saw great campaigns run for governor by Stacey Abrams, Andrew Gillum, and Ben Jealous. Great campaigns. They lost. But Mandela Barnes and Garland Gilchrist became the first elected black lieutenant governors in Wisconsin and Michigan. Real progress. So we have made some progress, but clearly all of us recognize that we have a long way to go to end the institutional racism which permeates almost every aspect of American society. And that is the bad news that keeps us up at night. And it gives me no pleasure, and I say this sincerely, I think sometimes the media doesn't believe that. It gives me no pleasure to tell you that we have a president today who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a homophobe, who is a xenophobe, and who is a religious bigot. I wish I did not have to say that, but that is the damn truth, and we got to say it. During Donald Trump's presidency, we have seen a sharp rise in hate crimes, and that rise comes as this country continues to be plagued by institutional racism and racial inequality. Now, as many of you know, my campaign for president now and the last campaign is about demanding that we have a government that represents all of us, not just the 1%. It's about saying there is something fundamentally wrong in this nation when you got 3 people who own more wealth than the bottom half of America, at the same time as millions of our people are working 2 or 3 jobs just to survive. It is saying that there is something wrong when 46% of all new income goes to the top 1%, when we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth, and when millions of our young people are leaving school deeply in debt. So as your president, there will be nothing more important to me than taking on these extremely powerful people and ending this horrific level of income and wealth disparity we see in this country, a disparity which is now worse than any time since the 1920s. But this is what we also know, maybe the most important point that I want to make this morning, that we must take on the disparity within the disparity, the racial disparities which exist in this country, which is also growing wider and wider. So you got 2 disparities, a general disparity and you got a racial disparity. Today, the infant mortality rate in black communities is more than double the rate in white communities, and the death rate from cancer, heart disease, and many other illnesses is far higher for blacks. Unbelievably, black women are more than 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy than white women. So when we talk about disparity, we are talking about the need for more black doctors, more black dentists, more black nurses, more black psychologists. We are talking about guaranteeing health care to all Americans as a right, but at the same time, ending the long-standing disparities which exist within the healthcare system. When we talk about disparities, we're talking about black children facing harsher punishment in schools than other students, and school districts which are significantly underfunded compared to white school districts. When we're talking about disparities, we're talking about black men who are sentenced to 19% more jail time for committing the same exact crimes as white men, and African Americans who are jailed at more than 5 times the rates of whites. Our job together is to end disparities in education and to bring fundamental reform to a very broken criminal justice system. Today's studies show African American job applicants receive far fewer job callbacks than other applicants, and we still see the same level of hiring discrimination that we saw 30 years ago. Together, we will end the disparities and racism that exist in employment practices. Today, African Americans are facing higher interest rates on loans and mortgages than others with a similar credit score, and black small businesses are unable to get the affordable credit they need to grow and expand. Today, at a time when when women are earning 80% of what men are earning on average, black women are earning 61%. That is unacceptable. Equal pay for equal work, whether you're black or white, male or female, equal pay for equal work. Today, on the 400th anniversary, not an anniversary that we're proud of, but an anniversary of the first Africans being brought to this country in slavery, the average black family now has 1/10 the wealth of the average white family. The truth is that this racial gap exists because slavery, segregation, Jim Crow, and predatory lending stole wealth from African Americans. That racial wealth gap must be repaired, and institutional racism from one end of this country to the other must be rooted out. Like many of you, I have been in the fight for economic, social, and racial justice for more than a few years. Just a few. And I don't want to criticize those who are younger. As this presidential campaign unfolds, and I know that you're hearing from some terrific candidates, many of them are personal friends of mine, but I want to just say a word about some of the differences, just a few, between Donald Trump and myself. I know we're going to have to dig deep, but we'll find a few. Trump is a man who, as you know, has said that he believes those Nazis and white supremacists who marched in Charlottesville are very fine people. Well, I am the son of an immigrant whose family was murdered by the Nazis. So from a very young age, I knew that we must stand up to bigotry wherever and whenever it exists. When the Trump family's real estate empire was discriminating against African Americans here in New York, I and others in the civil rights movement were protesting that kind of housing discrimination in Chicago and marching on Washington with Dr. King. When Donald Trump was stoking racial resentments in the 1980s by claiming African Americans get too many privileges, and then by demanding the death penalty for 5 black teenagers who were wrongly accused. You all remember that? Yeah? Well, he was doing that in Burlington, Vermont. We were supporting one of the few white politicians to do so, the candidacy for president of my dear friend, Jesse Jackson. When Donald Trump was promoting the racist, never to be forgotten, this racist theory of the birther movement, remember that? And how ugly was that, trying to delegitimize the first African-American president ever elected? Needless to say, I was campaigning for President Obama's re-election. When Donald Trump and his Republican allies were trying to suppress the black vote in the 2016 general election, I was running around this country campaigning for Hillary Clinton and pressing for automatic voter registration to expand the vote. And on and on. So I don't want to go into too much detail about the differences between Trump and myself. What I want to say is the mantra of our campaign is not me, us. And the reason for that is that no president, no matter how honest and well-intentioned, can do it alone. That's the message from Dr. King, is that we all have got to come together to change the direction of this country. And I'm very proud that we now have over 1 million volunteers on this campaign who are prepared to fight, not just to win the Democratic nomination, not only to beat Trump, but to transform the economic and political life of this country from one end to the other. So when I say we, I mean that when we together are in the White House, we are going to create a Medicare for all single-payer program. Health care is a human right, not a privilege. When we're in the White House, unlike Republicans, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security. Elderly people have the right to live out their retirement years in dignity. When we are in the White House, and I'm proud of the role that I've played working with Al, working with many of you, we're going to raise the minimum wage to this country to a living wage, at least $15 an hour. When we are in the White House, not a radical idea, much less so today than 4 years ago, we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. I want all of our kids, regardless of income, to be able to get a college education, and we're either going to substantially lower student debt or end it completely. I just met yesterday, on Thursday, young people from Howard University who are teaching. One of the young men there said he's $180,000 in debt for the crime of trying to become a decent teacher. That's wrong. We're going to change that. And we're going to invest heavily in historically black colleges and universities. And you know, we're going to pay for many of these programs by not giving tax breaks to billionaires and large corporations as Trump does. We're going to tell them that they're going to finally start paying their fair share of taxes. How stupid it is that you got a corporation like Amazon. Anyone here know how much Amazon paid in taxes last year? That's right, not a nickel. Well, that is going to end. When we are in the White House, we will end the disgusting effort of Republican governors to try to suppress the vote. If you're 18 in America, you have the right to vote. End of discussion. Automatic voter registration. When we are in the White House, we will have zero tolerance for police brutality, and we're going to bring fundamental reform to a criminal justice system that gives bailouts to bankers but puts in jail young people for nonviolent drug offenses. Brothers and sisters, we have, now I wish I could tell you otherwise, but we have an enormous amount of work in front of us. We're taking on everybody. We're taking on Wall Street. We're taking on the insurance companies. We're taking on the drug companies. We're taking on the military industrial complex. We're taking on the fossil fuel industry, who lie to us about climate change. We're taking on the 1%. We're taking on the media, among other things. This is not going to be an easy struggle, but this is what I believe. I believe that if we stand together, believing in justice and human dignity, if we stand together believing in love and compassion and not hatred and divisiveness, if we stand together in this great country, the wealthiest country on earth, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish, and I look forward working with you to create that goal. Thank you all very much.
Senator Bernie Sanders.